One of the things we talked about, Suzanne, is the first one, we really wanted it to be a little bootleg and everybody have their own space so that it didn't appear that we had this big meeting and practiced and,
Okay, sure.
And then,
Makes sense.
And then if we decide this all looks bootleg and we want to look more professional and we like that, then it would make sense if we improved for the next one. But we talked about not wanting to appear too polished.
It will not play. The chat does not display through YouTube. It would display. So how it's saved, there's two ways that it's being saved. One is it's a local, like when you record a Zoom meeting, it records it locally and it records it as 3 different files. Let's see.
Right, so you get a Zoom recording, but then you also get the YouTube recording, which is what was streamed that the public sees.
It'll keep a text file, Amy, of the chat, but you got to be careful as well, because if you do a private chat, it still collects those as well. So
well, that's what I was going to say is only use the chat as like you need help.
Right.
I'd rather have us use the chat rather than text one another and just say, like, I don't want to text David and say, oh my gosh, like I keep logging off. Just put it in the chat. That way, at least it's part of the meeting record. Other people aren't seeing it, but let's not, like, don't say something dumb in there or, inappropriate. But then let's use that as our, sort of our, somebody, people need to go on mute, or if there's some sort of the way we need to run the meeting, we can put that in chat because it doesn't matter if it's part of the record. Does that make sense? That way we're not.
Yep. The chat should be limited
during the meeting.
The chat should be limited to running the meeting, not to topics during the meeting. Yeah.
Agreed. And that would keep us from texting one another during the meeting and saying, so like I'm imagining the very first part of the meeting is a progress report. And I have Andrea and John, Eric, like different teaching and learning is going to participate in that. So it's first so that they know that because they've seen the agenda and I'll go over that with them today. But if it were up here, I might be like, hey, John, this question's John, you're up next. Or, just as a way to what we would normally do, like in a group, I might eyeball somebody and be like, hey, this is you. So let's use that just for organizing the meeting. That way, if someone were to request it, they could see that that's what we were doing so that it doesn't appear that we're all texting each other, and doing something inappropriate.
No, just thinking about, we've got the YouTube video that we'll have access to after the meeting. That will stay live. That will be a live link that is there that people can then access. However they need to, as long as they have the link, they can go back and watch the board meeting. But then we'll also have the video, the files from the Zoom recording session that we'll have access to too. And I believe that's audio, video, and like the chat log of that meeting. So I guess I'm just wondering which of those we need to save. If maybe we save all of them, I don't know.
I guess the only thing I would say is it just depends on if we want the closed captioning or not. Because if we're going to save the YouTube, then that would potentially give the opportunity for closed caption. My other question would be, are we keeping it like accessible, like just point and click, or we're just going to hold on to a recording? The reason why I'm asking that is because we've had so many conversations about whether or not we're going to move forward with something similar, almost like similar to this. And it almost feels like we just made it possible and the board hasn't really had a time to talk about whether or not they want to or have desired to make it completely possible. So I guess what I'm ultimately saying is, like, I'm not sure I'd want it to be accessible going forward, but if we take a recording, then maybe we're going to record the YouTube version because at least there's potential closed captioning. But I don't know, Kathy, if you have a different feeling on that, because we know that the closed captioning has not always been 100% accurate.
I understand what you were just saying, and I think actually there needs to be a board resolution that says what we're going to do about these meetings. Do you know what I mean? About these recordings. Just like we're having a resolution, where is it? Suspending board policy related to public participation and, you know, how we're doing the meetings. I think there probably should be a board resolution about the recording and where it's accessible and how it's accessible. And then we move from Amy's report to the Planning Commission. And just real quick, I don't want to spend a lot of time with it, but Amy will have the summary sheet. How much do the board members want to discuss tomorrow night? Do we want to get so far as to say there appear to be 6 people on the top of the list, there appear to be 4 people on the bottom of the list? At the next meeting, do we want to discuss the middle of the list and say, are there ways that we want to sort out those and see who else will be on? Or do you want to just accept it as a report and say at the next meeting, we will be discussing Planning Commission members?
I mean,
I'm good with either, but probably wouldn't be bad to just talk through it at least and see where we are. If we do have, 6 or 8 that look like they should just fall off together already, or 6 or 8 at the very top, that's a great place to start, and then talk about what we think we should do for the middle.
yeah, I mean, for me, this is the work session. So the more time we spend on that in the work session, happier I'll be.
Okay.
So how about if I will put it in administrative guideline or in the administrative section, but I'm also going to email it to you because there's some obvious breaks. There's an obvious couple, 3 that are just no's, but there's about 20 that there's kind of a nice break that you could talk about of the top 20, and 2 of which can't both be on it because they're married. So that's 19 that makes an obvious break. So I'll send that to you as an email, just like I would with a Friday update. And then I'll also put it in the administrative section. And that way you can give it a look ahead of time for how you might want to discuss it. Because I don't know that you need to discuss the middles. I think you've got a nice chunk of at the top, and it's fairly diverse. So I'll send it to you and see. Then you can have some time to chew on it beforehand.
Okay.
Maybe everyone could also be prepared to, if you look at it and you see someone that you rated very highly, but everyone, if there's an anomaly, someone that you rated very highly and the other 4 seem to rate much lower, maybe there could be a discussion not about that person, but about our criteria, and maybe saying something about how we rated a particular attribute higher or lower, if it's necessary. It may not be true. There may not be those kind of anomalies, but
There was just one anomaly where one board member rated someone significantly lower than everyone else. So I've already alerted that or asked that board member to review that candidate again, just look at it again. I'm not saying that their rating is wrong, but the rest of them were all sort of in the mix. I'm not saying there weren't some highs and lows, but this was a significant one. So I've just asked that board member to look at it. And for the record, I know the names of the people. It's not a human I know. I don't know the name. So I'm not trying to stack the deck on that. That was an anomaly. So I did ask that board member to look at that one, but the rest of them are all kind of, they're in the mix. This was a 3 with a bunch of 9s and 10s. So the rest of them, you can look at it and see that they're all kind of in the mix.
and then there's Kevin's report with costs, and that's where I think we really need to be careful discussing with Kevin what the costs are. We need to be careful not to get into particular names and say, well, we don't really need a superintendent right now, so can we put Amy's contract in abeyance and, or something like, we just need to be careful what we discuss as far as the finances are concerned. That would be my only warning.
Do we just want to do a thank you to everybody who's applied? And at this time, we are obviously in a situation where it's difficult to get started with that work.
Off the top of my head, my thinking, first I thought, well, we could tell the no people no, but then that means that the yes people don't hear anything. My thinking is that after Tuesday, we may very well be able to say as a board, we'd like a letter to go out that says the board has begun its consideration, but will not be making an announcement until we're a little clearer on when we would be able to meet in person, because we don't know that the first meeting of this planning commission could be a virtual meeting, something along those lines.
Makes sense.
I don't know what anybody else thinks.
That's pretty much where I am as well.
I'd like that tied into the thank you. I think the thank you still is good, and you'll have reviewed them and you can give some, you can talk about them, but then switching off the what comes next into we don't know what comes next. But I like the thank you. I still, now it might be time to it was a little tone deaf, the thank you that week, because we were going on.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just closing down, but now that's, I mean, we've settled into that. I think that makes sense to me.
How's the meeting being advertised to the public? Like, how will they view it?
The link to the live stream is actually on the board docs. When you click on the agenda, and then it's also on your board page where it talks about board meetings.
Meeting dates. Yeah.
And I'm going to deliver personal invitations to everybody in Loveland so they know about the meeting.
Make sure it looks like an invitation.
Should it be
Put
glossy
rocks in it.
paper, or should it just be a plain old piece of scratch paper that I have around here?
Gold.
Put it in a bag with some rocks.
Okay. Well, I saved my rocks, so I can go ahead and do that. That's good. That's what I'll do.
Deliver with a big hug.